Right, green lights, mixers alive, streaming frames, good stuff. Episode 74 of the Code Zone. Still not got bored of that. I like this a lot. Hello, hello. Yes, welcome to CodeZone episode 74. This one is Gooey or Gooey. Now, yes, firstly, hello to the people that are in the chat. Not that many tonight, but unexpectedly doing some streaming. It is hello Standard Inst, hello Bixie, hello Magetsup, hello Sunset E, oh, hello Sarbas47. Good. Right, why have I not had a few streams? Well, let's be honest, I've been on holiday. I've been doing a few other things. But mainly, and this is the most important reason, we changed the bedtime routine of my little girl, and that has caused some chaos in the evenings. Is the nicest way to go about it. I'm sure the parents in the room may very well sympathise. So they reach a certain age, and you've got to change the bedtime routine a little bit. And so she's now very active. She wants to play a lot, and she's up and down and up and down. So I can't come upstairs and do all of this in my studio because she's right next door, fast asleep, without her then sort of getting up and wandering about and wanting to be involved. And she's very curious. So that's one of the reasons why also I'm not on the Discord server until a bit later on in the evening. Now, the other problem I've got is I'm up at 5:30 in the morning. So I don't go to bed at midnight anymore. Those days are long gone. Oh well, never mind. So, yeah, who have we got here? We've got Alta. Hello, man. Good to see you still about. I don't see you on the Discord very much these days. Magetsub's just finished Mercury Rising. Oh, thank you, Johnny G. Sunset E. Wow. Yes, good. Hello. Oh, Eric Nikolai. Hello. Julian. Julian. Hello. Morris. Just put some pants on before we start streaming again. We've not missed very much other than some excuses, fairly lame excuses, whilst I've not been doing any streaming. And Johnny G, thank you for the sub there. Right. What are we up to? Oh, hey, Speedy, just sort of jumping in at the end as well. Well, we've just released a video. That was quite a nice video. We showcased a bit of PGE Tinker. Seems to be doing okay. It's not sort of rocketed up and gone viral, and that's because none of you are sharing the links. So go out and share the links with everybody you know. And if the only person you know is somebody else in this chat, then don't bother. Gruffler, hello. No pants, Tinker. No, we're not doing that tonight. Well, I could be wearing no pants. So I'm not saying anything. Right, as you can see, the title of this stream is called Gooey or Gooey. Now, I have sort of become conflicted and a little bit envious. For about, well, the best part of coming up to 4 years now, I have been battling Gooey. Graphical user interface. I just don't like the way the modern C++ environments do it. I just think WX Widgets looks a bit tired and a bit old. And every time I start a project, I think at some point it would be, let's have a nice user interface. So with the editor, I thought, well, let's start with the user interface. Let's actually use an established, sorry, I'm getting all tangled up in my own cables. Let's use an established framework like WX Widgets. And run with it, and it's been fine, but it's just a bit clunky, it's a bit old-fashioned, and one of the things I've enjoyed working in the Pixel game engine recently over the last few sessions is actually just how fast and intuitive you can create things. Remember that we did the texturing example where there was no tooling on the screen, and we were texturing things. I just thought, that's really nice. I actually quite like that. That's refreshing and modern. However, you still need a graphical user interface to do bits of it. And part of me goes, well, should I just focus on getting the bits of WX Widgets up and running, or should we have a go at trying to create our own GUI? Because it's something I've had four false starts with. And let me show you some of these, just to demonstrate. Because I put them in a video ages and ages ago, and I just need to dig out where the code is. So the first one I'll show is, well, I've only got this one. This is how far it got. And I was wondering, it might be interesting. it became quite a sophisticated thing. Now, all of this code here, just to show to demonstrate how much code there was, is actually something we can go and tinker with because it is in space thing. This was it. This was the GUI technology that we were using here, and it had draggable windows, and it had buttons, and it had menus, and all this good stuff. And I thought, you know what, it actually got quite feature-rich. But it was to censoring that now. Obviously, I've got to put my verbal censor on. It was very fiddly to use. It relied heavily on sort of being integrated into Pixel Game Engine, and I sort of think that's a limitation. So because particularly this is Pixel Game Engine 2, of course, and now I'm looking at Pixel Game Engine 3, how do we go about sort of reconciling those? I don't want to sort of develop wasted things. So then we jumped onto WX Widgets to do the editor in, and we got so far. I'm not going to power up the editor, but it's just clumsy, it's slow, the compile times take forever, and the end result is a little bit old-fashioned and unpleasing. Let's just catch up with some of the chats. Oh, Channel, hello. Remember you making that answer? Yeah, exactly. It's not fixed. What about the GUI you could draw the layout? Yes, you see, that's exactly. Thank you, Magetsu. Magetsu remembered that we got as far as being able to sort of describe the graphical user interface as in text form, and it would then go away and create these windows and dialogues. Maybe we could revitalize that. It was a bit of a fun distraction. So one of the problems I've had is you jump on one of two bandwagons. Either you want sort of immediate mode stuff, which is fine, or you want it's been dubbed retained mode. I don't know if that's the right name for it, but sort of classical sort of tree-based GUI system. And I actually prefer the more rigid classical base. So I just like to sort of have it there and then let things run their own course. They look after themselves. For me, that kind of works. But I wanted to make some sort of big technical change. Now, this is a bit of a flight of fancy. It's a distraction from the project. I know these things happen. To sort of alleviate my creating my own GUI itch, we created the quick GUI, which we saw in the spirals video. We can go and have a look at the tinker for the spirals video. Let me go and find a link. Hang on. If I click on this and I click on the video, oh, yeah, just ignore that guy. And we go down to the link here and load up PG Tinker. Very good. So this actually, if you didn't go and try it, this used the quick GUI. See, and the quick GUI actually was very satisfactory. It did what it needed to do. It allowed you some very quick controls over some basic stuff. It just allowed you that little bit of interaction. Yeah, every time I start playing with this, I just can't stop. I find it quite hypnotic to watch. If those that haven't watched the video yet, we talk about how to create this tool, but I do kind of jump through it at the end. There's a nice class in here which I've never sort of published before, but people are free to steal. It allows you to set up palettes of an arbitrary set of colours, and it will automatically interpolate between them. And it comes with some default palettes. So we've got a nice grayscale one, hot or cold, which is cyan through black through yellow, based on some normalised value, and the spectrum, of course, which is the spectrum is the one that's being drawn here. And you just sort of set up the colours proportionally where you want them in space, and whenever you do the sampling, it goes away and calculates what it needs to do. And it does it somewhat efficiently. It's not brilliant, but it's not terrible either. And it used the quick GUI. And you can see we established the quick GUI by setting up this GUI manager. And the GUI manager manages everything on the screen. And you've got sliders and checkboxes and buttons. And it's fine. In fact, somebody put a pull request on the GitHub today. They're complaining about some feature of quick GUI, which I didn't even know was in there. So I don't know how to really respond to that one. I guess that's the problem with sort of just not really knowing how to use GitHub properly and just dumping all your code in one big folder. So that was sort of the intermediate. This just got enough of what I needed to get by, but it's fundamentally a bit limited. It had some nice features though. I don't know if you can see that on Twitch, but the buttons sort of glow and come in, and it's, you know, it looks quite nice, and it was all themable as well. And I've learnt a lot with all of these false starts, which is classic one lone coder stuff. Yeah, nobody likes the shirt. I like the shirt. I thought the shirt was good. So all of these false starts have sort of taught me a lot about how not to do GUI. And then, of course, my arch rival and nemesis Diego shows up, and he's just gone and created a brand new GUI in Pixel Game Engine. And I thought, right, okay, I've got to go and get mine out now. Yeah, so there is actually Sarbas47. There is a Dear ImGUI extension already for Pixel Game Engine. It's fine. It's not really what I'm after. And Tim Pye hits on a very interesting point. Everything now is sort of XML-based descriptions of GUI. I'm unfortunately having to do some C# at work at the moment, and I'm using .NET Meow or whatever it's called, and I really don't like it. Nope. That's all I have to say on the matter. Yeah, Diego creates a new GUI every time. It's just the same as me as well. Oh, Diego, there you are. Didn't see you there. I keep thinking, because I see people doing these fantastic GUIs in Pixel Game Engine. I think, I should do a GUI in Pixel Game Engine. It's something I'm actually interested in doing. Now, why am I being nuts? Why am I not just using sort of the established WX Widgets framework? And the answer is I probably am. It's going to be a combination of a bit of both. The other reason is that the nature of the controls I need to do what I want to do next with the editor means I will basically be creating the WX Widgets controls from scratch anyway. So I thought, well, if that's the case, I may as well do them from scratch in an environment I've got a lot more control of, and the look and the feel. And it's because, I can use buttons and scroll bars and that sort of thing. I want to have. Remember, a few streams ago, we did something called polymorphs, which required timelines and layers. And so there's quite a complicated structure of a control required to sort of manage all of the interactions between those layers and allow the user to sort of reposition them, restructure them, reconnect them. Layers are also going to have sort of a parent-child relationship too, which adds an additional level of depth to that control. So coming up with something useful there was quite challenging. I also wanted I'd started to notice that we're running out of screen real estate. Maybe I should boot up the GUI. Let's just power it up, since we're talking about these things. Where was I getting up to? So there's we did a lot of work with the editor in WX Widgets, and none of that's actually wasted work. Because I made a solid effort to try and separate the workflow from the actual graphical user environment. So I don't think actually moving things around will be too difficult. Let's just see where this runs. Okay, so this was the editor. I've started to sort of play around with repositioning how all of this works. It's nice. I like this. I like the property viewer down here. But as you can see, as you drag things around, you get sort of flickers, and it is double buffered. It's just that I'm being a bit too demanding of what I'm expecting WX Widgets to be able to cope with. I like this sort of feature, being able to dock windows side by side, but suddenly, even if I maximize the window, I'm running out of screen real estate. I just kind of feel that you'd be editing in very small pockets of window. Now, compare that with, let me just close that down. Compare that with what we got with the editor we've been doing in Pixel Game Engine 3. So let me just start that up. It might need to compile this. I can't remember what state we left this in, so this may just not work. And a bunch of warnings. That's never a good sign. Let's see. Okay, there's the editor. We had to zoom in, didn't we? Oh, something strange and fun's going on here. Oh, I was playing around. Yeah, I shouldn't be using sort of prototype bits of programs to try these things. So I press yeah, this is not going to look pretty. What's going on here? What's going on here is me experimenting with a new feature I was adding to the Pixel Game Engine. Let's just see if I can. This is what happens when you don't stream for a while and suddenly you want to tell a story, and then you end up with these sort of 300 different tangents we need to go on before we get to them. Hopefully somebody's maintaining a stack, so once I finish one particular branch, we can get back to where we were. Let me just find where we were, actually, because I think this is a reasonably quick fix to put right, he says optimistically. You may have noticed, those that keep an eye on the development branch, there was a few additional features added to Pixel Game Engine 2 recently, which allowed us to play with sort of hardware clipping of decals. They've not actually been released yet. Now, I think I've just got to remember where we can disable those. And hopefully, maybe was it just that? Is that all that needed to happen? That doesn't look like it's drawing anything now, so I don't know. Oh, look at the memory's just going berserk there. We must have something where we've not actually drawing something. Oh, I don't know. Have I got some mode I've enabled? It doesn't look like it's anything up there. Ah, okay, there we are. Manual render enable. Let's take that out. Let's try that again. So this is a story for another time, definitely. One of the, if you draw a decal in Pixel Game, you had no way of clipping it other than to the screen boundary. So if you wanted to constrain your decals to a small sub window, there's a nice picture. Oh, that's because we were texturing. There we go. We're up and running again now. So if we pressed R, there we go. What I quite liked is it became a really intuitive way to start drawing and working with things and moving things around. What was the button to texture stuff? Does anybody remember? I can't remember. Select the shape. What was it? Space? No. Control click? No. Right click? Middle click? T? Oh, T. There we go. Things like this just suddenly became for me. I thought this is how we should be doing it. This is much nicer. And I quite like the idea of just having the full screen available for editing and as minimal GUI as possible, as little distraction as we can get away with. And I'm inspired by that from the Affinity suite of tools. So no, yes, but you're shilling the Affinity stuff again, but the Affinity stuff is actually really, really nice. It's standard Photoshop clone, but it doesn't clutter the user experience with lots of stuff. It keeps the screen nice and big. Not now. No, I don't want to update just now. New, whatever, create. And you've got a nice big work area to work with. I like that. That's how an editing tool should be. Now, in my editor, let's find the right one. That's the Pixel Game Engine one. In my WX Widgets one, of course, you're sort of limited to this little box in the middle of the screen. I just don't like that at all. Let me just catch up with some of the chats here. There seems to be a lot of people going. I wish I had a more legible font. Well, I know you didn't like the standard. Why is it? Jump back a little bit more. Oh, Phil Boswell is here. That's a name I've not seen for a few weeks, actually. Oh, very good. SP is a shared pointer. Why shared and not unique pointer? Simply because, like with WX widgets, and my GUI is sort of inspired. We'll get to the implementation details of mine in a minute. It's possible that the control can be destroyed, and you actually want to retain it until you've flushed out some buffers and then let it destroy. In principle, I want control of when it's destroyed, not just because the object goes out of scope. More legible font. Yeah, because I noticed that you never seem to use the proportional font rendering mode, Diego. I think it looks quite nice. Anyway, let me get back to what I was doing. So, GUI experimental 1 set as startup project. So, I started again. I started from scratch. I thought, oh, hang on. Mothcatcher, just subscribed on YouTube. Oh, right. Thank you, Mothcatcher. Where is the development branch? What do you mean, where is the development branch? It's go to GitHub, click on develop branch. Get all the new features, all the new stuff. Affinity Photo is actually good. I think does it not run on Linux yet? I know it's Mac and things really. Unless it's already a thing. Imagine a page that pops up a console and you can send commands to the app and shortcut. Well, you don't need to. You just press. You can enter console mode in Pixel Game Engine. It is already a thing. It's actually built in. 2x2 pixel size. That's the problem. Don't use a 2x2 pixel size. The default font is too big. It's 8x8 pixels. Yeah, so actually there is a built-in command prompt into Pixel Game Engine. You can type it in and enter commands. So, right, where was I? Let's have a look. Ownership. This is sort of the main program. So I started doing some experiments with a new GUI framework, just to dip my toes into the water of it again. And as Standard has already pointed out, we can start to see one of the things that I dislike about a lot of the GUI frameworks is just the clutter, the amount of garbage that you have to type in to get the most basic things. And that's because you do need these things in many ways to be pointers. There's really only one thing in this entire GUI, and that is the panel. Right? And it's the panel that does all the work. Now, I'm still sort of developing this to do things, but it does actually start to do some things already. And panels can have children. And the relationship between the panel and the children is a little bit complex, but it just makes it quite easy to construct things in place. And that's what I'm trying to balance. I want it to be easy to use, but at the same time, I want it to be flexible enough that the pros can do it. I mean, that's the golden thing for all software. But I'm prepared to compromise a little bit on the ease of use in terms of actually developing something I need. There's something to remember, guys. So those that are PGE fans, of course, decals don't obey the pixel size. So if you chose to render your decal at half your pixel size, it will then be on screen pixels. So don't forget that. Decals don't render per pixel. Right, so let's have a look at a bit of a GUI here. So I've got some things. I'll zoom in a little bit so we can see. The first major change, okay, is I have something called a system. Now, this is new. This is new stuff for me. The system is an attempt to actually fully abstract the GUI framework from whatever draws it and interacts with it in the background. Naturally, my system here right now is Pixel Game Engine 2, but it could very much be Pixel Game Engine 3, it could be SDL, it could be DirectX, it could be whatever we want it to be. It is abstracted, and I think that's a nice distinction to start making. So that hopefully might broaden its appeal if we run with it. So let's have a look at the interface for a system. System is a base class. It's got. I will sort of comment all of this as I start to develop it. So you say it doesn't rely on Pixel Game Engine. It technically doesn't really. I might abstract these vector sizes, but there's actually sort of no rendering code or anything like that reliant on Pixel Game Engine. If you've longer got a 2D vector type of some description, and at the moment I'm actually stealing that from Geometry 2D, which technically doesn't rely on Pixel Game Engine either. So these are for panels. All the panels are associated with a sprite or a decal somewhere in memory, or they might not have to be. It doesn't matter. It's some sort of target that you can render to. How that gets implemented by the system is up to the system. And as I'm adding these as I go along, because I don't know which ones I need, but these are basically the commands that the system has to be able to fulfill. So you set a renderable, you set the render target there, and then you can call, and any subsequent draw calls will affect that render target and just that render target. Same goes for mouse. So this is basically going to look and feel a bit like Pixel Game Engine, but it doesn't rely on any Pixel Game Engine implementations because I have a specific one, System PG2, which inherits from System, which then goes away and implements all of these. Now, for PG2, of course, a lot of these are just sort of call the correct method. Some of them are a little bit more involved. And the Pixel Game Engine 2 system stores a pointer to the Pixel Game Engine, and I don't actually, do I use that now? That might not do anything at all. I thought it might be useful. Oh, no, that is actually very important. That is where everything is stored. So all of the render targets, which are the sprites and things, are stored in a map, indexed with the renderable there. We're going to have a look at the guts of some of that. So if you go to the interface, there is nothing, generally nothing there. It is purely a virtual class. But if we go to this implementation, create render target, you can see it goes away and creates a renderable. It sets it the right size, adds it to that map. resizing render targets. So this is important. So panels can change sizes. One of the things I think is important in any modern GUI is that it's responsive to sort of the size. So things like sizes and automatically sizing controls and scaling themselves appropriately is something I'm aiming for with this implementation. So resize render target requires that the sprites gets resized, and then we have to tell the GPU that the corresponding thing has also changed size too. We've got set render target. That sets up what the current drawing target should be. And we've got draw render target. Now, draw render target is the thing that actually puts it on the screen. That one might be a bit tricky to make cross-system compatible, but we'll see. What else is on? As you can see, most of these are just direct proxies for Pixel Game Engine 2 functions. And this hopefully means I only have to develop this once, and I can then go away and use PG3's more vector-based drawing tools to implement for PG3. GitHub is the issue, not me. So not freezing the window, right? I don't know what the reference is there. Hopefully not freezing the window. We shall see. So a lot of the additions to Pixel Game Engine 2 on the development branch have been allow you to resize Pixel Game Engine 2 in real time. Oh, sorry. Yes. Yeah. Sorry. Forever loops. There's a problem we may be having with PG Tinker. So let's click go. Let's show you what we're up to with some of this. Yep. Okay. So this is a little test application, and it's I've deliberately made it bigger today so we can see what's going on. And as you can see, I've got some things on the screen. What have I got on the screen here? Well, let's go and see how the GUI was constructed. I've got something called a desktop. I'll come back to that in a minute. And on my desktop, I've got a text button, a regular button, and a frame. Now, these are all... This is as far as I've got, right? So there's not really much by way of controls. I just wanted to see what the construction of things was like. Desktop is the thing that contains all the stuff. I've abstracted it to its own thing because it's a bit like the manager, I suppose, in Quick GUI, but it's actually a panel in its own right, which means you could have multiple desktops as part of your GUI configuration. I don't know why that might be useful. Other than the convenience of perhaps being able to switch between one and the other, sort of at the drop of a hat. That might be quite a useful thing. So when you're creating your program, the first thing you'll need to do is create your system. There it is. And then I create the desktop, and I set the desktop with a specific system. I don't think we'll ever have a situation where we've got multiple systems under one application, but you never know. There are some pretty hardcore nerds out there. Then I want to create the buttons. So you create the controls via this add function. So that you create them as you construct the sort of graphical user environment. That's how you do it. So you add it in as a template argument. I think there's some template kung fu to actually make this potentially disappear based on this type, although I'm not explored that yet. And so this is a button, and that's a normal button. I did contact Starfreak Clone. I don't think he's probably watching this tonight, to talk about, is there a way I can hijack the IntelliSense? Because if you've noticed when you're creating these things, make shared and make unique and that sort of thing, it's clever enough to look at what the constructor arguments are of the object that you're trying to create, which is actually pretty clever stuff, right? It turns out it's built into Visual Studio. It's not something that's readily scriptable by the end user. So unfortunately, I can't sort of make my arguments appear here as you're typing them in. No, that's a cosmetic problem. And I've got here, I'm adding the frame as well. Now, in the onUser update function, all I need to do, I don't even need the set draw target anymore. Now, that's some debug remnants. I clear my background to dark blue, and then I tell the GUI desktop to update. Now, it could have all sorts of things dependent on elapsed time. It doesn't have to just do everything in one snapshot. There might be animations and things that need to occur. And then I call this refresh panel. The refresh panel gets everything to draw itself if it needs to. So the drawing system is reasonably optimal. Only dirty things get redrawn. And then actually render yourself. So that was this draw panel to the screen, and I just want to draw the whole desktop to the screen. What does the declaration of add look like? Let's go and have a look. Oh, let's go and have a look at it a bit clearer than that panel. There we go. So add is... I probably don't actually need to forward that, by the way, but at the moment it is doing. Yeah, exactly. It's yeah. I could add comments to the constructors and things, but it'd just be nice if IntelliSense just picked it up. Yeah, the forward. As I said, the forward isn't necessary. It's currently a very organic thing. Internally, a panel, by the way, which is what we're looking at here, the panel doesn't actually contain very much. It contains information about its size. It knows about its parent. It knows about the system, which is all automatically set. And it's got its ID. And that ID is kind of all hidden from the user. The user shouldn't need to worry about those sort of very low level down. And this is just a debugging thing that I've got in at the moment, just to make sure that the network of pointers was actually cleaning up after itself. Right, let's go and have a look at what's running, because... There we go. So here is the application, and if there's my mouse, you can see my mouse good. If I hover over a button, you can see it sort of changes colour. It knows that it needs to dirty itself. You can see that the frames per second is quite good, and you can click on the button, and you get sort of this nice little depression effect and a change in border. We'll have a look at how that's implemented in a minute. Down here is that non-text button. Now, it's unusual to a desktop to just add buttons, so I might restrict it to just adding frames and, well, dialogues. I'm only going to have frames, because a dialogue could just be a frame that doesn't move. It doesn't have to depend on PGE. That's what I'm saying. Yeah, though you could as long as you implement that interface with whatever you want, you know, as long as you fulfill what those instructions are expecting you to do, you could use something else. So I think that's quite a nice abstraction to make. This is the frame, and the nice thing, we can pick up the frame. There we go. It's nice and responsive. It looks like a nice window. You can see the frames per second dropping when the screen gets dirty. You see. So it has to redraw the stuff as necessary. Now, because we've got this facility to resize, I can resize the windows too. I can only resize on this edge at the moment. That's all I've coded in. I can't make it bigger, but in principle, it could work. And we can see that the title bar up here has a little button in the top corner as well. It doesn't have anything on that button, but that button is the same as these buttons. It's just a button. This title bar, I think, it's a panel in its own right. It is a panel. So that's a panel, and that's a panel, all contained within a frame panel. And so it starts to sort of look after itself, which is quite nice. So, with that, that's where I'm up to, and I thought tonight it might be interesting to potentially add a few more controls, because I kind of got source code for these things. I just need to re-engineer the source code into this way of doing things. It'd be nice to add another frame. I've not got any sort of Z ordering yet either, or focus, so that's something we need to work on. Let's see what happens if I add another frame. One will always draw on top of the other for now, because yeah, there is no sorting. But let's just add one just to see. Frame 1, and we'll just duplicate exactly the same thing, but I'll put it in a slightly different position. Let's create that. Hopefully this is all untested stuff, so we will see. As you can see, that never actually propagated through to the name of the frame yet. This is how infancy this is in. This never mind. You know what I mean. Right. Let's just stick that over there. So they're just not immediately on top of each other at the start. Cool Zikri, hello. Yeah, thank you. Gilgamesh, hello. So there we are, 2 frames, and hopefully... Okay, that one's up there. This one's down here. So they do behave independently. That's quite nice. But as you see, there is no Z order, so why can't I pick this one up? Because this one is the one on the top. So if I bring this one down here, now I can pick it up, but I can always pick that one up. See? So things like that, I've not got that far, just not implemented. It's not broken, just not got that far yet. it was quite nice being able to resize, because that's given me some, I think there's some interesting algorithms required to actually make sort of the contents of the panel resize accordingly too. Strong 3.1 vibes. Yeah, that's right, Bikekeeper. It does, doesn't it? Nothing wrong with that, though, right? That's working quite nicely. It's good. So why do you want to keep things as shared pointers? An example might be the following. Let's say I close the window through this. I wouldn't directly close the window. I would fire an event to some system to then go and sort of tidy up the window, but temporarily I would remove it from some of the structures that are responsible for rendering the GUI framework. So it kind of exists, but it doesn't exist, and that's why shared pointer just makes that sort of easy. So this is where I'm at. Now, one of the things that I wanted to try and make easy was the ability to have ready-made frames and dialogues. So things like file selects and folder choosing and that sort of thing, just ready to go for the end user. I've also made it that Pixel Game Engine 2, at least, can operate. I'm not going to demonstrate this now because I can't remember how it works. I've made that responsive to the sizing of its own window, and also got made it so you can define what the window looks like or be borderless, which potentially means if the only thing that you had in your Pixel Game Engine rendering was a frame like this, and you coupled the Pixel Game Engine resizing to the Pixel Game Engine window frame, you could actually just have a whole bunch of these frames in your computing environment looking like regular frames, but all being handled by Pixel Game Engine. In fact, that's how Pixel Game Engine 3 will do this. So that's a little trick for probably in the distant future. But it should allow you to then, you don't have to have sort of one big window containing everything. It would just look like your regular computing environment, which I think would be pretty neat. Yeah, we'll have to get more Ross up and running just one more time. So, what can we do with all of this information tonight? Well, I don't know. What's next? Well, the next thing is probably to start thinking about some sort of Z ordering, but that might be a bit complicated to do in the next 20 minutes. Perhaps something easier to do. We can have a look at some of these other classes, actually, if we're going to talk and look at code. Let's have a look at the panel now. Now we've sort of seen how the panel is constructed, what's on it. So anything that's prefixed with these system sort of prefixes is called by, well, the system to do things. These are technically, I'll find a way to sort of make those disappear for the end user at some point. But for the time being, this is the operating system doing something with the panel. The event handlers, the user could just choose which ones they want to override at any point and implement that in their own way. I have something called a request. Now, this is where things get interesting. So let's have a look at what requests we've got. Requests are not quite events. If a request is specifically something that the panel wants the system to do. So it's not an event. The events will be handled slightly differently. So let's go and have a look at a request. In this case, for example, excuse me, a request contains a pointer to the panel that called the request, that issued it, and an action. And you can see here, I've only got two actions at the moment, begin drag and end drag. So if I run this again, so this option here, this is a drag operation. I'm picking up the window. If I click in the window and drag, it doesn't do anything. But if I click in this title bar, it does. If likewise, this operation here on the frame, pixel perfect one, let me get it right, that is a drag operation. I've got to hold the mouse down, and when I let go, that's when it stops dragging. So there's two situations where we've got a drag request going on. Let's go and see what happens there. If I go to the frame class, the frame class actually contains a few different things. The first thing we can see is a frame title bar. But let's have a look at a frame first. So a frame basically a resizable window, some sort of window structure, contains two main components. It contains the title bar and the client area. That was the black area. So the black area at the moment is just another panel. But it does contain this title bar. Now the title bar itself is also a panel, and with the title. If we go and have a look at the implementation of some of these. You don't construct things in the constructor, and that sounds a bit strange. It's a little battle I'm having, and that's because I'm using things like shared pointers. I can't access this very easily during the constructor because it's shared from this. So I have a second method, which is kind of called silently by the system, which is construct contents, which I don't mind. In a way, it's actually quite convenient because I could defer the construction of contents until a point where it's appropriate to do so. For example, maybe you set up the GUI before you set up the system, that sort of thing. You can see here all I'm doing is adding a title bar and adding the panel and storing a weak pointer to those locations. And then I set those positions, hard-coded lots of magic numbers, because I don't have any sizer functionality yet. That's to come. But you can see when I resize the frame, at the moment, I have to resize the title bar and the client, and I set it to being dirty. And when I set it dirty, it goes away and propagates up the parental chain up until all of the components are drawn. Small talk 5, more, I don't know. Static factory functions, I don't like those, no. That's exactly what I did with one of my previous implementations. No, not for me. That just makes everything awful. It's like, that's such a retrograde step for me. Not happening. Bad, Morris, bad opinion. Your opinion is wrong, Morris. How dare you have a wrong opinion? So I have this, I was trying to find, okay, so mouse press. So when I'm clicking on the frame part, and as you can see, this is why it's only on one edge at the moment. I've not implemented it along the bottom. And perhaps we should implement it along the bottom. Why not? Let's just change that now. If I'm clicking on the frame on one particular side, this posts the request for begin drag. And so then that propagates all the way back up to the desktop. And we'll have a look at the desktop in a minute. The desktop then handles those drag events and sends them back to the correct windows to call on size and on redraw as necessary. It's quite nice. It works totally independently. I can develop this without needing to sort of change other things elsewhere in the system for it to work. And I can use the same event to handle that resizing as well as the repositioning. Because if we look at this title bar here, the title bar has an on mouse press. It posts the same request, but it means something different to a title bar. It doesn't do anything about resizing this time. It just gets you have been moved and you are dragging at the moment events sent back to it. Let's go and have a look at why the desktop does this. So desktops don't have very much, but they are responsible for sort of knowing about focus and where to send the events. So the desktop update functions are a little bit more complicated. I'm trying to comment this one as I go along because it is actually a little bit more complicated what's going on. At all times, we need to know where the mouse is and what panel is under the mouse. That makes a difference. That's how we could do things like the on hover, so on mouse enter and on mouse exit of a component. And that when you click, it's how you change the focus. It's or whatever you need to do. If we are, there we go. So we have a particular, my big long variable names here, have something called a panel with active drag request. So that's something the desktop is handling. So any panel, if there is an active drag request, of course we know what that is because the request contained a pointer to that panel. That then handles that appropriately. It gets where that location is, and then it goes and sends the appropriate mouse events to that panel. Here we go. So here we're interrogating the system for mouse buttons and presses and things and sending those wherever they needed to be. Yeah, little things like little edge cases like this. If anything is being dragged, chances are we're going to need to redraw ourselves. Now that sounds costly, but it's actually it does a check for redrawing. So if the panels aren't dirty, it doesn't actually waste its time trying to draw anything. Yeah, okay. So then that's all I've got at the desktop at the moment. So it's quite simple. Now let's go and change that frame to see if we can make the Y or the bottom border also responsible for the resizing. Easy win, this one. Hopefully, he says. And Y is less than that. So if we click within the X and Y border, hopefully, on mouse move. Okay, so this was... Yeah, this is what we need to understand. Are we dragging on the X border or the Y border? We're going to need a little flag to differentiate that, aren't we? So we've got a reposition drag offset. So let's have a bool MB resizing horizontal. It's false for the time being. So if we go into frame, if it was this one, MB resizing. Hello. Where have I put that? Have I put that in there? Put that in the wrong place, didn't I? There we go. Now, one of the things I'm trying as a developmental style here is actually quite verbose variable names, simply because you end up, again, lessons learned from previous GUIs where things start to look and feel a little bit the same size, a bit similar to each other. MB resize horizontal, wasn't it? What was it? What did I not call it? MB resizing horizontal. There we are. And for if we're doing it vertically, we'll set that to false. Don't know what happens if you click in the corner here, because it's going to post two requests. But depending on if we are, so if MB resizing horizontally, we do that. But if we are resizing vertically, yeah, okay, nice, duh. Let's do it that way. Get size.x vpos.y. There we go. All of the mouse locations and everything are relative to the top left of that particular control. The panels don't know anything really about their parents. They can get hold of their parents and interrogate them, but they always assume that 0, 0 is relative to them. So let's just try to see if that works. Oh, the chat has paused. Let's have a look. Could you use standard optional? Yeah. Again, it's very easy to throw every single C++ spanner at this. That's what I'm trying to actively avoid doing, because for me it's just not. I've learned that lesson. It's not how I wanted to do it. If I go back, and the reason I've popped up Visual Studio Code here was in case we wanted to actually look at any of these things. So let's have a look at common. What was something like button? Yeah, let's have a look at button then. So this was a previous incarnation. And linking with the parent straight away, factory method down here where it made things and called the constructor, didn't create very elegant code, particularly because I had to keep duplicating this all over the place. But also then when I wanted to sort of add children to it, the user would then have to go away and manually call how to construct the children to it, and it just didn't work very nicely. Maybe it wasn't very elegantly designed. These things never are. But the panel thing actually got a lot more developed. So I'm not starving for ideas on this, but it could just be nicer the way it was implemented. It ended up requiring code which just looked a bit of a mess. I don't know if this is useful or not, this file. Oh, the menu. One of the things I will be stealing is the menu system, because I thought that was really nice. That's how you constructed the menus. That's how you should be doing it, right? That is, in my mind, that is it. Right? There should be no sort of get header and pointers to different file menu entry points. You just sort of smash it out like that, construct it visually, and that's how the system renders it in the end. It just became a bit sort of fiddly. Is sort of the take-home message, I think. It worked. This was quite a cool demo because it actually ran several Pixel Game Engine instances as windows within the Pixel Game Engine. So it's not a million miles away from what we've got now, but I just feel it's a bit tidier than what we've got now. So yes, so this sort of make and then separately adding them, and that was a workaround to handle. And things like, yeah, this is an orphan pattern. It just these very long sort of, every line suddenly becomes 200 characters. Don't know why that's duplicated. So yeah, there's sort of aesthetic reasons. Let's just make sure to see if this works. Oh, very nice. There we go. So I can actually resize it vertically now. That's good. It's a bit difficult to, so that must be right, properly pixel precision there. Adding some tolerance to that's actually going to be quite tricky, particularly outside of the window. Certainly on the inside of the window I can do. It may be useful to think about having, if I click the diagonal, I don't know. Yeah, I guess it just picks the last one. Maybe if the panel is resizable, having some special widget that's displayed in the corner, and you can only resize it using that corner widget. The idea of having the frame, though, is it also could be set up to be not resizable, and potentially it could be modal. So I think modality is actually quite an important state in GUIs, particularly for user interfaces where you don't want to confuse your user. Yeah, so what happens when you resize on these side, Phil? I'm catching up with the chat. I know I'm a little bit behind. Well, in Windows, of course, it does actually do some resizing. We could do that too. We could just try and emulate that as much as possible. Yeah, it's a bit too precise. That's meant to be 2 pixels that you can click in there, but to me it looks like the mouse is in the right place, but it is a little bit delicate. So I wonder if my equalities in the ifs have actually sort of restricted that to 1 pixel, which sometimes makes it impossible to click. Now I've scaled the window. You know, 'cause now I don't know if I'll ever be able to sort of click on the pixels accurately or not. You can see in the output here, that's when it's doing the. I'm just sort of got some debug messages being thrown out. So that's doing the on hover and when it's clicked or not. But you can see it's not redrawing constantly. It only redraws when it needs to redraw something. That click's quite nice. Right, filthy bright mode. I don't know what I was talking about. Keep it simple, stupid. Yeah, that's my way. Less boilerplate. Thank you. Yeah, so that's basically it. It's what I'm trying to get to. Is I just want the GUI to be quick to use. Despite its flaws, WX Widgets doesn't actually have much boilerplate in order to get things up and running, and you can do some quite sophisticated stuff with very little effort. And it is easy to customize your own controls too. So those are the features I'm after, but I'm also, because I know that predominantly I've got 2 big controls to make which are complicated and will require access to all sorts of graphics in order to do, that's where WX Widgets is going to let me down. It might help to have the cursor change. We don't do cursor changes in Pixel. It's a sore point. We just don't talk about it. Changing the cursor, it is possible, but it becomes a little bit operating system specific. I could, of course, draw something where the cursor is to emulate that change, but not done that. So I'm going to slowly plug away at adding a few more things. So we've got buttons. Obviously, we've got the staple things: scroll bars, text boxes, labels, the bog standard things to get going with. And I was just going to rattle through them. I'm not going to sort of talk about them or demonstrate them because I've got that code already. The interesting controls pop up when they become things like the list boxes, because you want those to work sort of smoothly and nicely. And you want things to be as flexible as possible. So for example, the list controls, list of text is obviously one option, but actually a list of things is a better option in case you do want to have that sort of expansion of what is rendered as part of that list. The other thing I'd like to talk about is sizes, and maybe that's a set of algorithms to think about. So if you've not used sort of GUI development technology before, sizes allow you to put several buttons on a dialog, and if the dialog changes its size, all of the buttons move around proportionally according to the parent shape, and resolving those can be quite tricky. But it does make developing graphical user interfaces very easy. If we go back to the main ownership file here, you see I'm sort of hard and fast putting in coordinates. That's not very tidy. I just really don't want that at all. What I'd rather have is that the frames and the buttons are added to a sizer, which then automatically positions them in according to some sort of preferential rules. It's nicer to do it that way. Just make the cursor a decal. Yeah, the decal would probably be one frame behind the actual mouse, but if it's running at 1,000 frames per second, who cares? Right, so there we go. It was just a quick one tonight, really, because it's what have I been up to, and it's been GUI stuff. I'm probably going to open this one up as well to the community once it's a little bit more established. Just the sort of the basics, get that down, because I think there's something in this. I think Pixel Game Engine does lack a sort of an official GUI platform. I know there must be 10 or so now, sort of third-party ones, and they're all good in their own way. But just something that's officially supported means if people have problems with it, then at least I can help. So that's what I've been working on, and that's one of the reasons why the actual editor has slowed down a bit, because I keep getting this distraction. I'm working in WX Widgets, and I think I just need this to do something else. I need it to look a little bit more modern. I just want it to feel a little bit more slick. And once I've got bored of creating this GUI, I'll probably just go back to WX Widgets and carry on. As I mentioned at the start of this video, I'm probably going to look at a way of fusing the two, because there are some things in WX Widgets which are handy for it to just exist. So things like Magetsu mentioned earlier, sashing the windows, having them being able to dock with different parts of the screen, having that interaction with windows, actual windows, is quite useful too. So all of that to come, but... right, okay, yeah, good. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for the subscription, Johnny G. And yes, get on the development branch. Why are you not already on it already? Right, until then, see you next time. Take care.